Hello, everybody. This is the 33rd edition of Texas Longhorns Live at the Voice of College Football. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out what we're trying to build here. And it is game week. It is the first inaugural college football playoff, and Texas is a part of it. Definitely a fun week. Definitely a fun time talking about it with you guys. Before we get started on that, guys, can you please do me a favor? Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out what we're trying to build. Also, use the Amazon link in the description. It is that time of the year. You better get your Christmas gifts in a hurry. And why not get them through Amazon? Use that link. Does not change the buying process or experience at all. Just helps out Mark. Also, check out Mark's call-in show every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, post-game plus Sunday. You'll have a Friday post-game this week as well because Notre Dame and Indiana are playing Friday night. It's going to be a lot of fun, so please check that out as well. And then check out the Ole Miss channel and show at 2 p.m. every Wednesday. They also have a portal show going on every day on the main channel, so check that out as well. This portal season's gotten crazy, and we might as well start out with what Texas is experiencing. Yeah, already, because it's just getting started. What Texas is experiencing through the portal and their additions and the news coming out of it. So let's just start out with the big elephant in the room, and that is a big human being who went back in the portal after deciding for whatever reason. I don't know what changed the last 72 hours, but I'll let you hit on this one first, Gerald. What do you think is going on with Sadir Mitchell?
I don't know. If I knew, I'd probably write a book or something. I don't know. It's just wild to me. And frankly, like as much talent and as much potential as Sadir Mitchell has, I am so glad to be off the roller coaster. Like I am so very glad to be done with that. There's an old story from NFL writers where when Terrell Owens left the Eagles and went elsewhere, Ron Jaworski gave somebody a high five and said, "Tag you're in." Like that's kind of how it feels with this situation. And I am never a guy who's upset when a guy hits the portal. I'm never a guy who faults a kid for hitting the portal. You get one football career, and when you hang him up, you never put him back on again. So I'm never one to fault a kid for wanting to try to find the right place for their career. I wish it would have worked out with Sadir. He is an incredible talent. He is an incredible, could have been an incredible piece in this defense and had a pretty quick path to playing time. But I think ultimately, when things go sour in the relationship with the coaches, it seemed like there was some issues with personalities and attitudes and things like that. And again, sometimes it's hard to repair those things, and so sometimes you need a good break. And there are all sorts of situations in life where two good people try to come together and it just doesn't work out. And I think that's might be the case with Sadir.
Yeah, it's very weird because if it's playing time he wants, he's going to get that next year. There's literally no one standing in the way. Right now, our starter plugged in, our two starters are probably going to be Alex January and Justice Terry. And I don't love that, first off. But, everyone, it's kind of weird, too, because there isn't as much, I haven't at least seen as much outcry nationally as when we lost Sweat and Murphy and replacing them. Like there was a big bunch of, how is Texas going to replace this? How is Texas going to replace this? And I think inside the fan base, we realized Alfred Collins is still a really good player. Now, is he the most consistent guy? No, but guess what? He has been this year. Vernon Broughton's still a decent player. Well, he's elevated his game. There's literally no one even close to those two guys on this roster. Nobody. I don't know what's going to happen there. We'll talk about a guy we did add from Purdue and Cole Brevard. That does help out a little bit, but you're literally going to need four of him. And I don't know if you can find four of him. So it's going to be interesting. And I just don't understand it. Like you're going to get playing time. I'm sure you're being compensated well. I don't understand it. I really don't. It's really trying to get in the mind of a young man that's just had not constant issues, but he's handled this immaturely is the way to put it. I'll say he hasn't handled this the best way.
There's something like, I was a dumb 19-year-old, a dumb 20-year-old. I'm a dumb 37-year-old, 38-year-old. I forget my own age, right? But like at some point, like you've got to have better advisors around. You got to have better people in your ear. And some of these kids just don't do that. But I think we are. I mean, Texas is going to have to do better. Kenny Baker has done a really good job recruiting, and so I'm not worried is not the right word, but I feel like whether it's adding a couple more transfer pieces, whether it's Justice Terry coming in and getting to play early. Justice Terry already a grown man, so we've got a little bit of that going for us. I think Texas is going to be a attractive transfer destination. They've seen guys now multiple years in the last several. I mean, Poona Ford, you've got T'Vondre Sweat, Byron Murphy. Now you're going to look at Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins probably getting drafted as well. So Texas is going to become a valuable and kind of highly desired transfer destination for some of these interior linemen. So I don't think Texas is going to be have a hard time finding guys in the portal. I'm worried about the quality of the guys they can find in the portal. Texas got some great replacement level. They like moneyballed it, I guess, for lack of a better term, in the interior. So are we going to have to do that again this year? Probably. So we'll see how it works out.
Well, and that's the thing too. Piggybacking off like the Alfred Collins thing. So we lost Byron Murphy and T'Vondre Sweat. I believe T'Vondre Sweat was ranked number 1 according to Pro Football Focus. And then Byron Murphy was 3rd. I was like, okay, we're probably not going to reproduce that. And we didn't, but we got pretty close because guess what? Alfred Collins is ranked number 1 this year at defensive tackle, which was a surprise to me when I saw it a couple weeks ago. He's played phenomenal, and he's going to be a second-round draft pick because of it. Like he had all of the talent. He just never really put it together, the motor, the drive, and the talent all together in one season. He's done that. I'm going to just tell you guys right now, that's not happening this year. We're not going to have the number 1 Pro Football Focus guy 3 years in a row. I'm pretty confident in saying that. Like, you could have told me last year, hey, I think Alfred Collins can do this. And I'm like, you know what? He has the talent. He can. There's no one currently on the roster in the position to do that. Justice Terry's a little bit too young. Year 2, if you're telling me Justice Terry, fine. I'll believe that, and I could see a path for that. I just don't see who's going to be able to do that next year, and I don't think you're going to be able to do that. But the thing is, too, your edges are going to be very good next year. They're already really good this year. They're going to be even better next year because you're going to have Ethan Burke coming back. You're going to have Colin Simmons. You're going to have Colton Vosick. There's a real chance you have Trey Moore back. That's a really good 4 guys to rotate at the edge position. So that's going to be fine. Your linebackers, I think, are going to get even better there. So it's going to be interesting what they do up the middle. I don't know. We'll talk about, again, Cole Brevard, who got here, and then we also had a visitor today. But is there anything else you wanted to touch on that, Gerald?
No, I mean, I think it sucks to see Sadir go. I thought he was a guy who, when Texas landed him a couple years back, I was very excited about his potential. And I think, there is losing Bo Davis, I think has a lot of the relational ties that are likely going to go with him. And that, it is what it is. So, no, I mean, hopefully he finds the right place for him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any ill will. I think could be a really good player. You saw kind of flashes this year of his talent. He's tremendously talented. We were going one-on-one versus Georgia for this guy. Like those type of guys, we did that with Justice Terry. That tells you the kind of recruit this guy was. So we'll see what he does. Honestly, it's kind of the T'Vondre Sweat situation where they're both supremely talented. It was about, could you manage your weight? And we've seen issue with Sadir came in really heavy in the past. He lost a little bit of weight, but not enough, in my opinion, to where you can be a down in, down out player. So he's still going to have to deal with that. But other than that, I don't have really anything negative to say about him. So let's talk about on a couple of the guys that we did land. Jack Baumeister, I don't know how you pronounce the last name. The punter from Utah, really good punter, averaged over 45 yards a punt. He was all Pac-12, all Big 12. What do you like about this addition, Gerald?
I mean, he can actually punt the ball a distance, right? Like that, like not to put too fine a point on it, but Texas has not had the ability, at least this year, to flip the field. Texas got really spoiled with punters for several years, and then last year landing the top transfer punter. So not having that guy in the barn hurts a bit. And I've been critical of Jeff Banks and the special teams unit on multiple occasions. And so I think adding this level of talent, I think it also shows that we're probably going to see multiple members of the specialist unit probably find their way into the transfer portal sooner rather than later. But I mean, adding this level of talent, can't be mad about it. Cannot have punter is one of those positions where when you don't have to talk about them, things are going really well. And so I'm excited to not have to talk about the punter anymore.
Yeah, basically, if you get average or above average guys, you don't really talk about them. The only time you ever talk about a punter is if they're like tremendous like Michael Dixon or bad like Michael Kern. So that's really the only 2 times you talk about him. I don't need this guy to do anything special. If he comes in and did what he did at Utah, that's really good. Like he had, I think, 14 or 15 down inside the 20. His longest punt, which I know people were worried about this, the elevation. And I agree with you. I'm a Broncos fan. I see it all the time with them punting and kicking. You're going to get an extra 5 to 10 yards off of those just because of the elevation. But this guy, his longest punt was at UCF, 61 yards. And I believe that's actually below elevation. So this guy's really talented, and I'm excited to have him. Like, it's funny because if you would have said this 2 or 3 years ago, I'm like, it's a punter. But when you have a bad one and you watch him week in and week out, it kind of pisses you off because you realize you're losing about 10 to 15 yards. And with this type of team that Texas has this year, a really good punter would have been phenomenal because this is a really good defensive team who struggles, honestly, moving the ball at certain times on offense. So a punter would have become in tremendously well this year.
I mean, I think back to when Michael Dixon won the MVP of the bowl game, right? That was a game that was won by the defense, right? The defense won that game, and the punt is the first play of a defensive series. If Texas, again, had maybe 5 or 10 fewer yards to cover on an offensive series, because the defense is going to get you a 3 to 6 and out, generally, this defensive unit is. So having 5 or 10 less yards like that, especially playing in the SEC, the field position battle is huge.
100%. It's a big deal, and this guy, I think, will come in and do a good job. I don't expect him to be Michael Dixon level, but do I think he can be like a Ryan Sandberg type? Yeah, I do think he'd be that, and that'd be plenty good enough.
Sandberg was great.
Yeah, he was really good. Next up, we will talk about one of those interior guys, Cole Brevard. And Texas was on fire, honestly, recruiting over the past couple weeks. I mean, we've signed 3 out of the first 4 guys that visited. This is one of those guys, a guy that came in from Penn State, then went to Purdue. He's pretty productive. He's going to be a nose guard at Texas, most likely. I think he'll take on that Bill Norton role, and I think he'll do it well. He seems to be pretty good. And honestly, if you can stuff the run of the Big Ten, you can do it in the SEC. What do you think about him?
I mean, 6'3", 330, right? Like, is exactly what you want from a space eater. And again, like I said, when we were talking about severe transferring out, Texas is going to become one of those places where you can go play a year or 2 of good football and find yourself drafted in the first couple of rounds of the NFL draft. Texas has now done it multiple times with defensive tackles. And so I'm glad to see that reputation is holding out. Texas needs to do it about 3 or 4 more times for me to feel good about next year. But, getting him on campus and not letting him leave is the right move. I wish he could suit up potentially for the college football playoff. We'll see how that works out. But, I'm glad to have him. Big body, big space eater. I love a good fat behind defensive tackle. Like, that's a compliment, right? Like, and that's your linebacker's best friend. When you have Anthony Hill, who can play sideline to sideline, his best friend is a defensive tackle that can occupy 2 men in 1 gap, right? Grab a center, grab a guard, and let Anthony Hill make some athletic plays. So I'm excited to see it. He's going to be a good addition, and I think Texas is better for it. So again, do it a couple more times, and then I'll feel really good about next year.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a good player. Like I said, I think he'll take on that Bill Norton role. I think we need one more guy like him, and then you need another 2 guys like an Alfred Collins, more get up the field pass rusher guy. If you get that, then I think they'll be fine on the inside. But this is a good addition. Again, you're getting a guy that honestly isn't from like a North Texas or some guy from another program that kind of failed at that program. This guy was a quality player at Purdue that was just honestly on a really bad football team. And I think he'll be a pretty good player for Texas. And we have the right coach. I think Kenny Baker's a really good football coach, and he's done a really good job of recruiting as well.
I owe Kenny Baker like 1,000 apologies. I was not convinced on Kenny Baker when they hired him. And the guy has been an incredible, he's been a really great position coach, and he's landed elite talent. So I owe Kenny Baker, I don't know, whatever he wants, a bundt cake or something. I owe him an apology for sure.
Yeah, I know. We're as a fan base, we're big Bo Davis stands, but let's be honest here. I actually think Kenny Baker's done a better job at recruiting and done a pretty damn good job at developing. He's definitely a better recruiter than Bo Davis.
As it stands right now, yeah, proof is in the pudding, and the skins are on the wall, man.
Yeah. So the next guy that did commit, Brad Spence. This is the guy I'm most excited for. This is a really quality 3rd linebacker. You're going to have Anthony Hill, Leonardo Lafau, and then you have Brad Spence, who honestly, he'll play all over, guys. I expect him to play a little bit of that Trey Moore role, where sometimes he'll have his hand into the dirt, come off the edge. He'll drop back in passing situations sometimes. And then I think you can actually slide him into the inside as well. I don't think he'll have to do that much because you have Anthony Hill and Leonardo Lafau in there. But he could do it if he needs to. So this is a really good 3rd linebacker and a guy you're getting off of a quality SEC team, a bowl-eligible SEC team. You took one of their linebackers, and he was playing his best football down the stretch, Gerald.
Yeah, I mean, Texas needed a linebacker or two, I think, and adding quality depth is the right way to say it, right? Brad Spence is a guy who can come in, who can give you 15 or 20 snaps a game and really, really be effective. And like you said, Texas really appreciates multiple position guys. He's a guy who's got a decent first step. So if you're trying to blitz somebody off the edge, he's a guy you can put in that package. He's a guy who could probably play a little bit in coverage, where Texas has struggled a bit in coverage this year from the linebacker position. I think we got really spoiled with Jalen Ford being one of the best cover linebackers we've seen in a very long time. So I think he's a guy who gives you a lot of options. That's the kind of player that Pete Kwiatkowski loves. Give Pete Kwiatkowski a Swiss Army knife, and he's going to do a lot of fun things. So I think Brad Spence is a guy who will come in and see the field early and often. Obviously, he comes in and tries to boost his draft stock, so I think he's going to come in. And, Texas has gambled on some guys in the portal, and we've seen it. Last year, Kendrick Blackshire came in from an SEC program, didn't work out, transferred out after spring ball. So Texas is not afraid to take some of these big swings on guys that could be really key pieces, and I think Brad Spence is one of those.
Yeah, and I think this guy has a more upside than a Kendrick Blackshire, who mostly, at Alabama, he was mostly rotational. So at most, he played like 5 to 7 snaps of real defense a game, but he's mostly a guy on special teams. Now, this guy can actually play. And I'm excited to watch him play. And again, we're honestly, other than the defensive tackle, we're pretty deep. Like linebacker, I'm not worried about now. Cornerback, I'm not really worried about now, even though we'll get into possible guys there because there is some news about Takario Davis from Arizona, which, hey, I'm not going to turn that guy down because that guy's a freak at cornerback. So if he wants to come, he can come. But we're going to be good at safety. We'll be good at corner. We're good at edges. It's really defensive tackles. And if they get that filled, I think this defense can be – I'm not going to say just as good as this year, but I think it'd be somewhere between this year and last year's defense, in my opinion. And I think the offense will take a step forward as well.
I mean, it's hard to say they'll be good as this year's defense. I think they're the number 1 FEI and S&P Plus defense. It's hard to expect that multiple years in a row, but I think you're right. I think the drop-off will not be as massive as folks are expecting.
No, and I think it'll be better in some ways. I actually think that might be better at rushing the passer next year than this year, which is pretty crazy to say. But again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out the channel. And we'll also talk about possible other additions in the transfer portal. So we'll go back to this. So we did have this other guy visit from Purdue. He did not commit. He visited Texas A&M over the weekend. He's going to visit Oregon. Tight end Max Clare. I believe he's still the number 1 ranked tight end in the portal. 51 receptions, 685 yards, and 4 touchdowns. I think this guy, everyone was talking about Deuce Robinson, and my mind went there as well because we finished second in his recruitment behind USC. But this guy is much more of an NFL prototypical tight end. He can block, he can catch, he can do a little bit of everything. I think you can line him up even in the backfield. He's more like Gunnar Helm than anything, in my opinion. So this would be a really good get. What do you think about him?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think when you think about Deuce Robinson, you think more of the Jatavian Sanders role, where it's not as effective as a blocker, and that's again Jatavian Sanders is great as a pass threat, great as a culture guy, but again had a strength issue I think when it came to blocking. And so Texas and Steve Sarkisian really like a guy who can do both. Right? They need a guy who you don't have to rotate off the field when it comes to pass time, or isn't a liability, who doesn't get blown up on a wide receiver screen, which is what Gunnar Helm generally does not do. And so having a guy like Gunnar Helm who can backfill and be a consistent threat, especially, we're just going to say it, especially with Texas likely playing a first-year starter next year, having a good, solid-handed tight end that you can dump off to is a young quarterback's best friend, with Arch Manning presumably taking over next year. So having that kind of player at tight end is exactly what the doctor ordered.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's very important to land a quality guy that can receive. He can receive the ball, but also block, because we're going to replace a lot of this offensive line too. So he's going to be like another offensive lineman out there when he is out there. Yep. So I think it's important to land that. And you don't want Nick Townsend as a freshman, Michael Terry as a freshman, taking those reps. I don't mind them receiving, but I just blocking as a freshman in the SEC as a tight end. I just don't. Yeah, it is. I just don't see that as a positive. So I would love to land this guy. I think this guy, usually you see guys jump in the portal and they know exactly where they're going. They take one visit, like the 3 guys we mentioned before, and then they're gone. I think this guy's honestly going to take all his visits, sit back probably for a day or 2, and then decide where he wants to go, which I have no issue with that. You're making an important decision. So it's going to be interesting where he does decide to go. Or guess what? We're battling some juggernauts here. We're battling Texas A&M. If that Micah Hudson's deal that I saw online is true, my God, they're willing to offer anything. And then Oregon, we know what they do. So it could be very interesting where he decides to go.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that Micah Hudson message board post has much merit to it, but I mean, it would not be the first time that Texas A&M overpaid for some players based on production. It is what it is, though, right? Like Texas A&M is gonna throw out some money. They are at least off the field, as far as recruiting budget goes. Oil is doing well right now, I
Yeah.
believe. So they've got the ducats to try to shell it out if they need to.
Yeah, 100%. Next up, we'll talk about a guy who was on campus today, Lee Hunter from UCF, correct? University of Central Florida. So this guy came in from Auburn, went to UCF. He's had a successful career in 2 seasons, 113 tackles, 20 and a half tackles for loss and 4 sacks. This is definitely more of the Alfred Collins role of a guy that can get upfield a little bit more. He's not bad versus the run. He's just able to get after the quarterback a little bit more than Cole Brevard. So I think this would be a nice addition to Cole Brevard, because then you got one guy that will plug up and then one guy that will be able to get upfield in the run game and in the pass game. So we'd already have one of each. We need one more of each, but still be nice to land this guy.
Yeah, he played edge in high school, so that kind of shows you what in Alabama ball, which is not. Or he's from Florida. Sorry, he's from Florida ball. So like not much to sneeze at there. Like he is a guy who I think you're very much right, like in the Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton kind of mold of a guy who kind of moved their way down from edge to defensive tackle and plays more of that speedy rushing kind of thing. And again, like I said, when we talked about the one who's already committed, Texas needs like 3 or 4 more of these guys. So you know what? Don't let him leave. Just block the door, write him a blank check, keep him in Austin. Texas needs that skill next year because again, the defense is going to need to get it done. So I need it. Just bring him home. Just keep him here. Don't let him go.
Yeah, we definitely do need him. It's going to be interesting. I have heard literally nothing about news about either him or the next guy we're going to talk about, and Eric Singleton, but I haven't heard any news. I hope it went well. We'll see. I haven't heard any other visits that he has planned, but he would definitely be an important piece. Like I said, the only thing I'm questioning about this defense is the interior. If we get that shirt up, I think it's still going to be a really good defense. So next up, we will talk about the guy that as soon as he jumped in, I said that is a Steve Sarkisian guy, and that is Eric Singleton Jr. in 2 seasons. So this year, he had 56 receptions, 754 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Last year, 48 receptions, 714 yards, and 6 touchdowns. This is a guy that's doing this at a predominantly run-heavy team. And he's doing it against quality competition, and he did it versus Georgia. I mean, he was doing really well this year versus Georgia. He came off the screen to me, and I was like, man, I'd love to have this guy. It kind of reminded me, I watched Silas Bowden last year at Oregon State randomly. I think they were playing Cal, and I watched him like, damn, this guy is dynamic. And then when he jumped in the portal, I was like, get him, and we got him. And I think you're going to see him play a bigger role in the college football playoff. I feel the exact same way, but I think Eric Singleton's a slightly better player than Silas Bowden. I think he's a better route runner with a little bit more juice as well, which is crazy to say because Silas Bowden's pretty damn fast, but this guy also runs 10.3 in college as a track star at Georgia Tech. So what do you think about him, Gerald?
Yeah, you mentioned Silas Bolden. I love Silas Bolden, but the guy plays what I call like naughty toddler football, where he's got to just run around and see what pops off. I think Singleton is probably more of a polished receiver, more of a polished route runner. And again, he's been doing what he did in the Georgia Tech offense. Now, it's not like the triple option Georgia Tech offense, but it's it's similar. It's close enough. They're cousins at least. And so I think, they're early buzz with him and Ole Miss, but I think Texas, obviously, if it's a spending contest and Texas really wants him, I don't think Texas is going to miss out on a kid that they're spending on. But Texas is going to need at least a body at wide receiver, an experienced body, pending what happens with, Isaiah Bond. There are early reports that, he's not right and he's been shut down for most of the off week. So what's that going to look like in the future? What's Matthew Golden's future going to look like? So Texas likely going to need at least another experienced body in that wide receiver room just to help kind of the top end and set the basement for it. So, or set the foundation for it. So, Texas, you need a guy that can take the top off the defense, and a guy who's running a 10-3 is a burner. He can get down there, he can get deep. And the thing that folks love about Arch Manning, chuck it deep. And so that's the kind of guy you want on the squad when you got Manning throwing it like that.
Yeah, 100%. I think his top 5 were Miami, Auburn, Ole Miss, Texas, and I forget the other school that jumped in there. It might have been Georgia, but he's got a lot of heavy players in here, so it's going to be interesting. It would be nice if we heard something tonight because that means the recruiting visit went well, and then maybe we get a commitment today. Who knows? But it's always interesting because usually with transfer portal, it's the opposite of high school recruiting. High school recruiting is kind of drug out and they take till the end of the process to decide. Usually transfer portal, that first or second visit is when they go or commit. He could be different. Like I said, Max Lear seems to be taking all his visits and then deciding. Eric Singleton could do the same thing, but right now he's the number one, I think, just player in the portal in general. So it'd definitely be a really nice get for Texas.
Yeah, and the portal, I think the portal cycle is going to be a little different this year just because it's earlier in the process, right? They continue to back this thing up. It's going to be in November before we know it. But like, when a lot of guys go into the portal and have like a week or two to get their stuff and move in before the spring semester starts. So I think giving them a couple of extra weeks is going to elongate things just a little bit. I think it's going to allow guys to make the right decision. But ultimately, yeah, he's a guy Texas needs. Get him in the class, and we'll sort it out later.
So we'll move on to the next person. This is the last guy that I've heard any news about. I know there was Dalton Johnson, safety / linebacker from Arizona. I haven't really heard any real smoke from that other than the early initial report. But this guy I've heard some additional smoke from, and that's Tacario Davis, a guy that's played very well at Arizona, was in the portal for a little bit last year. Texas was very interested, and I think he ended up being the highest rated cornerback in the Big 12. So imagine if we would have landed him last year, having Jahdae Barron, Manny Muhammad, and Tacario Davis. That would have been, our defense would have been taken to another level in the secondary, which I didn't think was possible. But this guy's really good. 6'3", long, lengthy, special athlete, and that's just freakish to say 6'3" for a cornerback.
Yeah. And, this almost feels very much like the Trey Moore situation from last year, where Trey Moore nearly transferred to Texas, stayed at UTSA next year, and then ended up in Texas this last year. I wonder if Tacario Davis is in a similar situation, especially with the Johnny Nansen change from Arizona to Texas. There's that connective tissue there. So I'm very curious to see how it shakes out. And again, Texas is probably going to need, Jahdae Barron's gone. So you're going to need another body, another shutdown guy, another guy who can make plays at multiple spots. And for a guy like Davis getting into the SEC, you play at Texas for a year. And if things go well, you're looking at it, you're looking at a top 3, top 4 round draft situation for him. So like, that's a big up for him.
Yeah, 100%. He could already, I know I've seen mock drafts of third round for him already. So it could be one of those things, explore the transfer portal. If I don't get the money I'm looking for, go to the NFL because he's going to get drafted in the top 100 picks. It's going to be interesting. But yeah, if he has a really good year next year, we're talking about a guy like Jahdae Barron last year would have been a 5th or 6th round pick, and he's going to be either late first, early second. Tacario Davis could do the same thing. He'd go from 3rd to 1st. And that's the thing, too. What he does for Texas is raises that ceiling. I don't think the ceiling is as high if we don't land him, because then you're looking at Manny Muhammad, who's still, listen, I think he's had a good year. He hasn't had the year I've expected him to have. I thought he'd have a little bit better of a year, but he's had a good year. Yeah. But if he can raise his level to that level, I think he can get to, and Tacario Davis does what he does and comes in for the Big 12 and continues to do that, this defense really doesn't miss much from the cornerback room as a whole. So that'd be really nice to land him.
Yeah, and again, you cannot have too many talented and experienced skill players. Like experienced skill players, especially in the SEC. And I don't think people are like, we're not talking about this enough because we're still in the middle of this season. The quarterback play in the SEC next year is going to be nuts. Like, we really need to be talking about that soon. So having a bevy of talented corners that you can rotate in and out, or a guy like Tacario Davis or Manny Muhammad, who did it this year, can come in and lock down a side of the field. You cannot put too big of a price on that.
Yeah, this is the crazy thing about the SEC. So the Mississippi State quarterback, Michael Van Buren, goes over and he's willing to sit at LSU. I think Michael Van Buren next year could have been a top 6 or 7 quarterback in the SEC, and he's going to sit on the bench at LSU. So that was a really good move for them. It's hard to get people to do that, but we knew they were, like, certain teams are going to go hard in the transfer portal because of who they have at coach. And listen, that time is running out on Brian Kelly, on a Billy Napier. They have to go hard after the portal. So we'll see if that works out for him. But that is the portal news for Texas for this week. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. Also, check out the Ole Miss show every 2 p.m. with Leanne and Mark over there. It really helps out that. Subscribe over there as well. Also, check out Mark's call-in show every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday post-game. It really helps out the channel. Also, Sunday, the recap show, and there will be a lot to talk about this Sunday, recapping a lot of different playoff games and what that sets up for the next round. And then also use the Amazon link in the description. Does not change the buying process or experience, and it really helps out the channel. Again, guys, this is the 33rd edition of Texas Longhorns Live, and we do have a game to talk about, so let's jump right into that. Texas is favored by 12 points. It's actually expanded a little bit there from 11.5 to 12. The over-under is set at 52. Let's just talk about this line really quick, Gerald. What do you think about this line as it sits right now at 12 points?
I mean, I think it has a lot to do with the Texas defense, right? Because you think that's like 26 points a team, so they're implying that like Texas is going to win like what 38 to 14 ish, right? Like that. Did I do that math right? So like that to me shows that there's a lot of faith in the Texas defense and not much faith in the Clemson offense, or not the faith in the Clemson defense either. So I think there is. It's scary for me, but I also think, if everything breaks right for Texas, like I don't think Clemson can hang with Texas. If we get the Dr. Jekyll and not the Mr. Hyde Quinn Ewers, I think Texas probably rolls in this one. I think, we're looking at a Clemson team that's getting hot at the right time, but there's also a team that needed a comeback against SMU and a last-second blunder from SMU to even get into the playoffs. So there's a lot to be said about Clemson's. This isn't Trevor Lawrence Clemson. This isn't Deshaun Watson Clemson, right? Thankfully, maybe. But there's something to be said for experience, right? Dabo is one of the most experienced playoff coaches in the country. He's done it before and he's done it again. But back to the question, 12 feels like a lot, but I think again, if the defense plays up to their standard and can shut down this Clemson offense, it's probably going to be, outside of Georgia, the best defense Clemson has faced all year. So can Cade Klubnik in that running game that's hobbled a bit with their running back out, can they move the ball on Texas? It's going to be the big question for this one.
Yeah, so they faced, in their 3 losses, they lost to Louisville, South Carolina, and Georgia. And if you look back at those losses, they really didn't run the ball very well, or they didn't stop the run very well in all those games, and they ran the ball okay. So I think, obviously, like I said, and that's kind of funny because I think this college football playoff, I don't think there's a great team, and I think it's going to be heavy on matchups. So if Texas played their best game in this game, I think they should cover this game. I think they'd win by 14 to 17 points. But we don't know that they're going to do that because they're so inconsistent. So I don't really love the line. Honestly, if I'm gambling on this game, I probably would say Clemson in the 12. Now, I still think Texas wins probably 7 to 10 points, but we'll get into that a little bit further. But it's going to be interesting because of the matchups. Clemson is a very feast or famine team on both sides of the ball. They have an explosive play rate that's very high offensively. If they're not able to hit those in this game, how does that work? How are they able to move the ball? And Texas is like the number 1 defense in the pass game of giving up explosives. They don't give them up. They're in the top 10 and explosive run plays given up. They don't give them up there either. So how can Clemson manufacture that? Or again, are they just going to completely change their game plan? Because they have enough time. They've had 2 weeks, a bit over 2 weeks actually at this time when the game does kick off. So will they have the time to change the game plan because they know they don't really match up well with Texas? Will they try to drag this game out into deep waters? And I think, honestly, that is what they should do. Get this into a fourth quarter game where it's in 3 points and let Texas beat themselves. Because guess what, Gerald? We've seen this Texas team beat themselves. Have they lost the games that they probably could have lost? No. They could have lost that Texas A&M game, though, if Texas A&M had a competent red zone attack, because we gave them multiple chances down the stretch. So does Clemson just do that? Do they just drag us into deep waters and then finally, when they get those chances, they take advantage of them and score in those certain situations that Texas A&M wasn't able to score in? So it's going to be very interesting, and we'll see what also happens with Phil Mafah, the running back. I know he's been injured, and that's big, guys, because the next guy up, Phil Mafah has 1,106 yards rushing. Jay Haynes is next up at the running back position with 295. So it's not even close. They don't really have a really reliable backup running back. If Phil Mafah...
Haynes is out. He tore his ACL.
Oh, he is? Okay, yeah. I didn't even know that. So,
yeah,
if Phil Mafah's out, they're going to have to... Cade Klubnik is going to have a special performance if Phil Mafah's out. Like, he's going to have to run or pass for 250 yards, and he's going to have to run for 75-plus yards. That's like their only path to victory, in my opinion, if Phil Mafah's out.
Yeah, and even if Maffa is in, they've already confirmed he's going to have shoulder surgery following the season. So like he is playing hobbled. And this is not me trying to like be the sunshine pumper or gas Texas up more than we need to, but like they're gonna bang. Texas is going to come in and hit hard, and they're probably like unfortunately going to try to target that shoulder a bit and hobble it because with Jay Haynes getting hurt in the ACC championship game, like Clemson doesn't really have an option, and it's hard to ugly up a game if you don't have a consistent running back. So like it's just Clemson feel like is running out of win conditions in this situation because I don't know like Klubnik can go supernova, and we've seen it, and it's happened. And I think he's a guy who is very capable of doing it. But like, what help is he going to get? I don't know if the Clemson offensive line is going to be able to hold up against Texas. I'm pretty convinced at this point that the Clemson running game is not going to be able to get going simply because who's the healthy running back that they have. So like, it's going to be a lot on Klemnick's shoulders in this game. And there's one thing. There's a lot of nice things you can say about Pete Kwiatkowski, but when he has multiple weeks to plan for a team that really only has one win condition, he's going to figure out how to take it away. He's going to figure out how to take it away. And so this is going to be the chess match. And so I'm very curious to see what this Clemson offense comes out and looks like. Because again, if Maffa we know is not at 100%, if he can go, Haynes is out for the year with an ACL. So he's done. It's like they're on RB3 at this point, which again, maybe that evens the playing field with Texas, who's also on RB3. But again, it's hard to tell at this point because we don't know about Maffa's health, but ultimately it's going to be on Cade Klubnik's shoulder regardless.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because I do think when it comes down to quarterback and 2 wide receivers or 3 wide receivers, I think this is the best Texas has faced all year. I think Klubnik's probably the best quarterback. And then you go with Antonio Williams and Bryant Wesco Jr. I think that's the best pair of wide receivers we've seen as well. Other guys have had talented wide receivers, but no quarterback. Kentucky comes to mind there with Dane Key and Berrien Brown. And no offense to some offense to the quarterback. He was god awful. Brock Vandergrift was terrible in that game. The backup actually came in and did much better, and Cutter Boyley. And then I'm trying to even think from there because we didn't see DJ Lagway with their wide receivers. Oklahoma, absolutely not. A&M, not really. Georgia, not really. Like, I think this is pretty clearly the best quarterback with wide receivers combo we face. So how do these guys match up? Like Jahdae Barron, you're the Thorpe. Go out and give these guys hell. Malik Muhammad, you're a really good player, going to be an NFL player. Go out and give these guys hell. And then coming off the edges, I think this is one of the weakest offensive line Dabo Swinney's had at Clemson. You should be able to exploit them. You should be able to get sacks in this game. You should, in my opinion, you should be able to get 4 sacks. I want 1 a quarter. If you can give me 1 a quarter, I think we're able to win this football game. It's going to be interesting because Clemson does have a path to win. I do think they can win this game, but it's a narrow path. And to me, it kind of reminds me, listen, Michigan's not as good as Clemson. That's not what I'm saying, but it kind of reminds me of the Michigan game where Michigan had to muddy this game up, take us into deep waters. I think Clemson's going to have to do sort of the same thing unless this Texas team does something they haven't done all year, which again is give up explosive plays. If that happens in this game, then Clemson can definitely win this game, but I don't think they're going to be able to do that because nobody's been able to do that.
Yeah, I think the other elephant in the room there is like, can Quinn Ewers keep them from having short fields, right? The Clemson offense will be fine if they only have to go 30 yards to score a touchdown, right? Most Pee Wee teams can do that. I think my son's Pee Wee field is only like 60 yards, so that is what it is, right? But like that's the other question is, does the Texas offense do enough to be able to keep? Because I'm pretty confident that Texas can limit Clemson to 17 to 21 points, right? That feels like an easy expectation for the defense based on what the Texas defense has done this year and what Clemson has done this year. So can the Texas offense put up 24 points? That's the big question that we have. Clemson's defense is, again, they don't have all of the high-end talent they've had in the past. Some of it's in Austin. Praise wherever you choose to praise. But, like, they're still good. They're still well coached. Dabo Swinney's still a defensive guy. I think they're the number 23 defense in the FEI this year. Texas offense is number 19, so it's a pretty tight matchup there. Giving up like they're number 20 in the country in points per drive. So, like it's a good defense. So I really think I don't feel any sort of trepidation about the Clemson offense on the Texas defense. My bigger questions are on the other side of the ball. The Texas offense versus a solid Clemson defense. Which Quinn Ewers do we get? Which offensive line unit do we get? Which running game do we get? Because if we get the good versions, I think Texas rolls. I think if we get the struggle versions, I think if Quinn Ewers throws multiple interceptions, if Texas fumbles the ball multiple times, if Clemson is able to consistently get pressure, then I think things get really scary really fast.
Yeah, the only game that I can think of where Texas really got in like really bad third down situations. We did it in the Michigan game, but let's be honest here. Quinn Ewers had all day to throw in that game. The offensive line did a good job. And then when he didn't have time, he was able to move up in the pocket. We really haven't seen him do that since. But the Georgia game we lived in, I think the average was 3rd and 11. So do I think Clemson can force us into that? I don't know. That's going to be the question of the game. Can they force us into those obvious passing situations? If Texas is living in 3rd and 5 and below, I think they're in control of the game quite easily. But if they're not, it's going to be very interesting. And it's pretty simple for me. I said this last week. If Texas can run outside zone effectively, I think they, like you said, they win this game rather easily. Every game that we've run outside zone effectively, we win the game, and I'm really not that worried. I know the scores are always closer than they should be, but I've never been there like, oh, we're going to lose this game. In the Vanderbilt game, I didn't think that. In the Arkansas game, I didn't think that. I didn't think that in the A&M game. The only games I felt, oh, we're going to lose this game were Georgia because we had no push in the running game, and that's what happened. So it's going to be very interesting if Clemson can stop the outside zoning run versus us.
Yeah, I mean that is the key to the offense, and Sark has talked about it before. Like, and Quinn Ewers is better when they can get that going because he's great at play action. So it really is the key to the offense of getting that zone read going, or not the zone read, the outside zone going.
Yeah, 100%. I'm going to touch on this real quick. Adrian, we are simulcasting on Texas and Clemson. So we're just talking Texas today. We're going to do the Clemson guys will do the same thing with their show, and we'll actually be on that show as well. So we'll be breaking down the Clemson game in more detail there. But they're going to be simulcasting on the Texas channel as well. That's what we do on the week of games. We cross content-wise. So that's why you see us on your channel. We do not even know about the portal commit you're talking about for Clemson right now, unless Texas just had something. But I don't think they did.
I think he's a guy from SEMO. I think not the first portal player, but one of the early portal players from SEMO for Clemson. So
Okay.
maybe Dabo's learning some new tricks. They say you can't teach a dog new tricks, but maybe Dabo's just trying to get after it. I'm excited.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. How many points is Texas would I have to give you to guarantee a win in this game offensively?
From the offense?
Yes.
Man, like 24 points feels good. And that's not a shot at Clemson. I think the Texas defense is just really that good. Like, I think if Texas can get to 24, 27 points, I think that Texas probably is able to win this one by sheer force of the defense just being good.
No, I agree. I said a couple weeks ago, I said about a month ago, I said 27. And then after watching me more, I was like, I think if you could guarantee me 24 offensive points and basically not give the ball over in your own red zone, so they're starting inside their own 20, 25-yard line, the other team is on our side of the field, I think 24 points offensively would win us every game from here on out. And I stand by that. I think if we score 24 points in this game and not throw like a pick six, a fumble return for a touchdown, or turn it over where they're inside of our own red zone, I think we win the football game. The next question, how much over under 10 snaps for Arch Manning?
Oh, man. I'm going to go under, I think, just because there's some caveats there. But I think my gut tells me under. I think Sark is going to continue to use it sparingly. I really don't. Because at some point, like, it just becomes like you're tilting your hand, right? Like, they know they're going to run when Arch comes in. And if you do too much of that and then you start to pass the ball with it, well, then are you in a 2-quarterback system now, right? So I think it'll continue to be a very sparing use situation. So I'm going to go under.
I would go under as well. I think we're going to see 6 to 8 is my guess. And obviously, barring injury. Obviously, if that happens, you'll see him more. But I'm just talking about, I think you'll see him in the red zone. I actually think you'll probably see him on like a 4th and 1 situation. If we do get there, a 3rd and 1 situation out of the red zone, and we may even take a play action shot off that in this game. I think you'll see more versatility in the way we use him in this game compared to the way we've used him the last couple games.
I'm calling my shot right now. At some point, if Texas makes it deep, even if they don't make it deep, I think we're going to see an Arch Manning jump past to the goal line. I'm calling it now.
I could also see a situation where you have Quinn and Arch out there at the same time. I think 100%. You'll see that possibly.
Absolutely.
So, most important question, final score, what do you have?
That is, I don't bet. I haven't bet since I lost all my lunch money one year in middle school betting, or high school, I guess. But for me, my gut tells me Texas has this. Clemson is a good squad. Clemson's got Cade Klubnik is an incredible quarterback. Cade Klubnik has a lot to do, but I really like in my gut says something like 28-14. Texas is probably where I want to go. I just think the Texas defense is too good. And I think at some point, the Texas offense, the running game is probably going to get going. So I think 28-14 feels about right.
I'm going to go 26-17. So I don't think they cover. I think it's somewhat close for most of the game. And I think Texas pulls away late. I could see like 19-17 Texas scoring a late touchdown in like the middle of the fourth quarter to pull away, put a cap on it. I would love to, if Texas wants to run away in this game, here's your thing. Get up 14-0 and unleash the pass rush. Like if they do that, I think they'll win the game pretty easily. We just haven't seen it. Like other than Florida, I haven't seen that. And Florida, again, I don't know, invested they were in that game. But I'm going to take Texas to win that game. And it does surprise me, like Clemson, out of all the games, is actually the biggest underdog out of all the games during playoff weekend, which is pretty crazy.
I mean, they are a good squad. Dabo Swinney has not forgotten how to coach football, but like they got in on an automatic qualifier, right? It's like there's something to be said about that, and that's no shots at them. And again, they could come out and absolutely shock us on Saturday. I hope not. My weekend will be much better if they don't. But Clemson, by just virtue of like what people expect from Texas this year and what Clemson has showed us this year, I mean, I think it makes sense for what Vegas has done all year.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be interesting. I'm excited to watch it. Remember, guys, it's on TNT, and it's Dusty Dvorak, and I forget the other. I think it might be Dave Pasch. They do a good job. I like that crew, so it'll be interesting.
Dusty's one of the few good Sooners.
Yeah, he doesn't really – you can't – like if you didn't know, you wouldn't be able to tell that he went to Oklahoma, which is good. That's what you want out of your announcer. Next up, we are going to hit on the other games just pretty quickly. No, Indiana is getting 7.5 points versus Notre Dame on Friday night. The over-under is 51. What do you think about this game?
It's hard for me to pick against Cignetti just because Cignetti is who he is. But I think most people's opinion of Notre Dame is built around like 2 games this year, the A&M game at the start and then the NIU game the next week. And so they've been playing really, really good defense. As of late, their defense is really solid. It's hard for me to pick against them. I just think they've been playing really good football to close the year. I think their defense is one of the better units in the country. And Indiana, like it sucks to say it, but like their biggest competition this year, they kind of got ran off the field. So it's hard for me to pick against Notre Dame.
Yeah, I'm going to take Notre Dame to win. I really want to take Indiana to cover. I'm just not sure. I could see them losing this game like by 8 or 9 points, and then you don't cover. I think Indiana's a decent football team. I don't think they're bad at all. I know I've heard a bunch of people say that. That Ohio State game was a little bit closer than people want to lead on just because you had the 2 special teams turnover. The guy dropped a punt inside their own 10-yard line, and I just don't see that happening in this game. I think this game's low scoring. Like if I had to hammer anything, I'm hammering the under. I don't see this going over. I think it's going to be low scoring.
It's going to be the Big Ten special. Everybody's going to hate it, but it's going to be great football.
Yeah, I think it'll be like 24-13 or something like that, 24-17. Something. It would not shock me, honestly, if I'm going to pick an upset. Listen, I don't consider Tennessee, Ohio State an upset. I know we're going to get to that game next. This would be the one. I think Indiana can beat Notre Dame just because Notre Dame is not a pass heavy, can run you off the field offense. For them to beat you, they're going to have to run it down your throat. Ohio State didn't even really run it down Indiana's throat. They threw it all over them, but Riley Leonard with those wide receivers is not throwing it all over Indiana. So no. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I'm going to take Notre Dame, but I think it's a good football game.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be defensive football. It's going to be old school stuff, which is what I love.
Yeah. Next up, Tennessee versus Ohio State. I know there's all this talk about Tennessee coming in droves to the Horseshoe. That's going to be interesting if that is the case. This is an interesting game. I'm surprised it's 7 points because to me, Ohio State struggles with teams like this. Tennessee can run the ball and then play defense. We just saw them lose to a team in Michigan that can run the ball and play defense. And guess what? Tennessee's a better defensive team than Michigan. They're better at running the ball than Michigan, and they have a better quarterback than Michigan. So I don't know why this line's so heavily towards Ohio State. I do think Ohio State wins the football game, but I would take Tennessee in the 7 points. I think it's going to be a slugfest. These are both really good defenses. I think, in my opinion, I think Texas has the best defense, and then the second best defense is either Ohio State or Tennessee. So it's going to be a really good game.
Yeah, and I think the weather's going to be pretty nasty, so I'm curious to see what that does to Ohio State's offense. I think they'll probably have to run the ball more, and they like as much as like they prove that they maybe struggle to run the ball with the Michigan game, right? They were unable to run the ball and they needed to against Michigan. So I think Tennessee has a puncher's chance in this. Tennessee also struggles when you punch them in the mouth, though. They're not the most physical football team in the world, which is part and parcel of there's the system that they run in Josh Heupel's offense and all those things. But I'm this one's I think probably the toughest pick for me. My head says Ohio State, my heart says Tennessee. I don't know why. I've got some friends that are Tennessee fans. I think Tennessee can come in. And again, I think the weather's going to be a factor. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think 46.5 probably feels like a solid line. I might take the under on that just because it's got the potential to be cold and wet, which you always want to take the under when the weather's like that.
Yeah, I think, honestly, it comes down to offensive line play. Tennessee's has kind of been shaky all year. Then Ohio State's suffering with, Josh Simmons out at left tackle and Seth McLaughlin out at center. I heard today they're thinking about rotating centers, which is crazy. You're going to do that in a college football playoff game.
That's wild
and
to me.
Yeah, so that's true.
Game, don't rotate centers.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I don't feel good about that. We'll see what happens with that. I don't know if that's just a report, if they're feeling it out. But we'll see. Their offensive line has not looked great since losing those two guys. And guess what? That's to be expected. If Texas lost Kelvin Banks for the whole year and Jake Majors, they would take a step back as well. Yeah. But especially Ohio State, because Ohio State really doesn't have the depth on the offensive line like they used to. So it's going to be interesting what happens in this game. I honestly think whatever offensive line can control that opposing defensive line is going to win the football game. I think that's what it's going to come down to.
You're not going to hear me argue that.
Next up, we have a game I'm just getting weird feelings about. I don't know why. I like Penn State more than most people, but I don't think any human being I've seen is even giving SMU any chance in this game. I've seen nobody even saying, you know what, I could see it. I see no one saying that. So I don't know what to feel about this game. How do you feel about this game?
This is an SMU team that took Clemson. I mean, had a chance to take Clemson to overtime if it's not for a weird special team situation at the end. So I think SMU is a really solid football team. Which James Franklin do we get? Do we get big game James or do we get big game James? Right. So I think that's going to be the question. There's still an opportunity for Penn State to kind of fulfill James Franklin's manifest destiny of losing a home playoff opener. It's hard for me to pick against the Lions. I think their defense is good. I think Drew Aller already said he's coming back, but I think Drew Aller has an opportunity to be a really, really great quarterback next year, probably one of the top couple of quarterbacks in the country next year. And I think that Andy Kotelnicki has seemingly figured out some things with his offense. I really like Kotelnicki's offense. I like him as an offensive coordinator. I think he's probably one of the top 10 probably offensive coordinators in the country easily. So it's just hard for me to pick against Penn State, but it's not a shot at SMU because I think SMU is a really talented team, especially when they made after making that quarterback change. I really think they found the right stride. They found the right groove. They're a tough team. They don't run an offense that don't necessarily make you think that they're a tough team, but they're a tough squad. But ultimately, I just think the talent of Penn State, the scheme, the environment, I think all of those things are going to play together. And I've got Penn State in this one.
Yeah, it's interesting because Kevin Jennings, super mobile guy, and I think this game is similar to the to the Texas Clemson game. I think for them to win, I think he's going to have to throw for 200, 250 yards and run for 75 to 100 yards. And I think if SMU's smart, I think I would run a lot of play action bootlegs away from Abdul Carter. You see this from the Patriots back in the day when they would face TJ Watt or Von Miller. They would leave that guy unguarded and make him decide whether you want to crash down versus the run or go after the play action bootleg type of play. And I think that's how you handle him. You don't want to run at him. You don't want to do anything like that. But you just want to run and confuse them away from the play and just get them to freeze for that split second. You see that all the time in football. The most confusing for those guys, because they've been double team, triple team for the longest time, you leave them unblocked and you have them decide what am I going to do here? And it's paralysis by analysis. So it's going to be interesting how they handle that, because no offense to SMU, if you go one-on-one with him, he's going to destroy your offensive line. That guy's a top 5 NFL draft pick.
That's everybody in the country. That's not an SMU shot. That's everybody.
Yeah. So you can't do that for him. It's going to be interesting how they handle that. It's going to be interesting how SMU also handles Tyler Warren, who's the best tight end in the country. Listen, you can debate that. I think he is, but it's going to be interesting how you handle that. How do you double cover him? How physical do you decide to get with him? I mean, he's going to play all over in this game. And then also their backup, Bo Pragula or whatever his last name is. I'm always terrible at pronouncing that. He's gone now. So if Drew Aller gets hurt, I have no clue what they're going to do at quarterback. So there's a lot of interesting storylines in this game.
I mean, they've lined the tight end up at multiple positions. Maybe they just go a little tight end wildcat quarterback situation.
Well, yeah, someone said that today. I think that's what Joel Klatt thinks that's what they would do if he did get hurt, because he's the only one left that's thrown a pass. Like, he's thrown passes. He lined up as a center. So, I mean, who knows? But honestly, if you can take him out of the game, SMU, I think you got a shot, because their wide receivers don't scare you. Other than the game versus Oregon, they have done nothing all year. And that was in a dome versus a team that I don't think the defense is very good. So we'll see what happens. But I would take Penn State to win the game. Again, it's kind of like the Indiana thing for me. I could see SMU covering, but I could also see them losing by like 9 to 10 points, and then you lose out on that. That's why Vegas makes all this money, because they set the lines beautifully. But I would take Penn State to win this game, and I would take the under here as well. I think it's an under game.
I think that feels fair.
So that is our playoff predictions. Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out the channel. Also, check out us on our Twitter accounts. That is mine right there, Matthew MS97, and this is Gerald's right there. You can also check out his podcast at Longhorn Pod on Twitter. Please go over there and listen to that. You can find that on any podcast site like Spotify, Apple, and Amazon. Correct, Gerald?
Yep, everywhere you want podcasts, you can find us.
There you go. You can find them there, and also follow them on Twitter. And again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. This is the 33rd edition of Texas Longhorns Live. We will be here after the game, so we'll probably be here games at 4 o'clock Eastern time, probably 7:30, 8 o'clock Eastern time, 6 or 7 Central time. And then we'll probably be here for, half an hour, 45 minutes, and then run off and watch the rest of that Tennessee-Ohio State game, which is going to be a good game. So please join us for that one, guys.
It'll be fun.
Yep, that does it for us today, you guys. Thank you, guys, and hook 'em.
Hook 'em.
College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, showstopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.